Hello guys, welcome back to the video. It's Stratus Forecast Weather here, once again with another video. I know it's been a couple of months since I've uploaded a video, but I figured I'd upload one. So we got a lot of stuff to talk about. So, before we begin today's video, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to never miss an upload. And without further ado, let's get right into this. So first off, we're gonna go through the satellite radar and stuff like that. Then we're gonna go over the potential for a multi-day severe weather threat, potentially severe weather outbreak on Friday, and stuff like that. So yeah, right now we are dealing with a storm system that is moving through the Northeast at this moment. It is a very minimal system. It's going to be moving off to the north and east towards Nova Scotia. This is going to drop anywhere between 2 and 5 inches for most of southern Maine. This is even kind of a little bit farther north, but this snow has been it's falling at a fairly heavy pace here. Good banding through portions of Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and back through portions of southeastern New York. Um, this snow will continue to work its way off to the north and east over the next couple of hours. This will provide up to 2 to 5 inches for portions of Maine, mostly the I-95 corridor down to the coastline, but it cannot be ruled out either that farther areas of interior New England or Maine get an inch or two. Across the rest of the United States, we are looking at fairly calm conditions. We've got a cluster of thunderstorms across portions of Illinois, Missouri, and portions of Missouri. These are mostly non-severe for the most part right now. We are not dealing with a really severe threat right now. We do have one special weather statement that is out for a particular thunderstorm near Bloomington, Illinois. This one is just for half-inch sized hail. You can probably expect some gusty winds with these thunderstorms as well, although I don't think there's a whole ton of wind shear up in this environment. We also have flood watches up for portions of the Ohio Valley, including areas of southern Ohio, southern Indiana, and also portions of West Virginia as well. Um, Other than that, this is really the threat today. We're going to be watching a threat take place across the southern plains today. The main threat is going to be for an isolated 20 or 2 damaging winds, gusty to damaging winds, and the potential for hail as well. Then we've got, other than that, it is fairly quiet. We can take a look at the satellite as well. All right, so here's the satellite for the entire country here. We've got, again, stationary front happening here, which is going to allow for multiple storms to ride along this. We're going to have a general jet stream pattern that's kind of aligned like this. So it's going to allow storms to form and to ride the jet stream up like this. It's going to pull moisture out of the Gulf. And with that being said, we're going to see multiple days of severe weather. But yeah, that's what's going on right now as far as severe weather goes. Now let's get into more of the modeling and what is coming up next. Alright, so here we are with the European model. Again, fairly conservative as far as the storm going on in the Northeast. This should not be a huge snowmaker. It's going to be a fairly quick mover, so it should be out of here by tomorrow night at the very latest. And it shouldn't drop a whole ton of snow. For that event, we're going to just pull out the HRRR model and kind of give you a little rundown of what's going on in the Northeast today. So here's this little system here. This is not the latest. Here's the little system popping up. It's a relatively weak system, nothing like the blizzard we had a few weeks ago. Snow will continue to overspread the area into the evening hours tonight. It will only last for the next couple of hours, and potentially we could see a bit of a freezing rain event in the Massachusetts area in southern New England, which I did not quite expect. And then we can expect a snow to start falling in portions of southern Maine and work its way north and east. But as you will tell, this system will not be able to get the snow band or the snow shield much farther up than Bangor, Maine, that is. This will continue to move through, and yeah, that's that. With this freezing rain, there is the concern for ice accretion, which, again, I didn't really realize was going to be a factor today. But as that system moves through, that is it, and it's out of here by midday Wednesday, if anything. So what are we looking at for snowfall accumulation? Well, if we take a look at the snowfall accumulation from the HRRR model, we are looking at a generalized 1 to 3 inches at most. I could see some isolated areas like portions of down east Maine and southern Maine getting localized amounts near 4 inches possibly. But for the general most part, this is a very weak system, so I wouldn't expect anything. But without freezing rain, it did look heavy. We can take a look at the icing. So the ice accretion possibility is the potential for upwards of 3/10 of an inch of ice accumulation. Um, I'm not sure if those weather if the winter weather advisories for this area are I saw a up to 1/10 of an inch of ice accretion. We can look at other models as far as that goes, like the NAM model, for example. I'm seeing trends here that suggest, yeah, we could be dealing with upwards of 3/10 of an inch of ice accretion. It's not a significant event by any means, but it is enough that there's potential for at least a few tree branches, maybe even an isolated tree, that's smaller, could come down. But other than that, it's a fairly localized threat. I don't see much happening with this besides maybe some localized power outages, but nothing major. And just to confirm that, here's the FSA model that is also used for short range weather forecast. Uh, it does kind of steepen the threat of freezing rain a bit more, so this is calling for upwards of 4/10 of an inch of ice accretion, which, if this were to happen, there is the potential for more scattered power outages, potentially even widespread at this point. But as far as snowfall accumulation, again, generalized area will be between 2 and 5 inches for much of the state. I could 5 inches is at the max. Really, it's going to be more of a 2 to 4 inch snow accumulation deal. All right, so as we go further into the week, things are going to get quite interesting. Today, we actually have a bit of a severe weather risk, which we will get into right now, actually. So today's severe weather risk, also, by the way, the Storm Prediction Center, or the SPC, has updated their severe weather outlooks to look a lot better. A marginal risk of severe weather is in place for western portions of Illinois, central Missouri, southeastern portions of Kansas, and northern portions of Oklahoma, as well as northeastern portions of Texas. This is for there was a potential for a tornado. I don't know what happened to that threat, but there is a potential for a tornado, I do believe. Um, Never mind. There is not the potential for tornado or wind. I did think there was. I apologize for that. There is a hail threat. It is a little bit lower, but as you can see, generally in a 5% risk, you do not see hatching, but they're doing a little bit of upgrading with the Storm Prediction Center, so I think it's pretty cool in my opinion. So you can see we have a little isolated spot that's hatched area. This is a level 1 intensity, as you can see over here. This covers more portions of extreme northern portions of Oklahoma and once again southern portions of Kansas. But the 5% risk does expand through Illinois and all the way back to portions of Texas. Now, in more details, we'll take a look at the weather modeling for this right now. Alright, so this severe weather risk is for Wednesday. Is for Tuesday into Wednesday. So we're going to continue. We're going to start to see storms develop during the early morning hours through the morning hours on Wednesday. We're going to see some clustering of thunderstorms here, and these are where the hail producers are going to be. These are going to continue to move off to the north and east and develop a line of thunderstorms where it does interact and create a line of thunderstorms, kind of very, kind of, kind of what the weather models have been suggesting lately in those 5% zones that the SPC has thrown out there. Basically just a 5% risk of tornadoes, but not for this area, not this time anyways. But convection, very widespread convection moving through with a potential for hail, and then it will reinstate itself and continue going on through the day on Thursday as well. And this looks to me like mostly a damaging wind risk, although I could see an isolated tornado with this risk because the thunderstorms are a bit, kind of a little bit farther apart, but it shouldn't be a significant deal overall. And then as we continue going on, that's the really end of that severe weather risk. So as far as the wind shear goes, to really estimate, so here there could be the potential for some damaging winds, gusty winds, and the potential for hail. Just because the SPC didn't outline an area for wind does not mean you're not going to see gusty winds. Thunderstorms in general do produce gusty winds. It just may not reach the threshold for a 5% for a damaging wind risk. But I could see some localized wind gusts that meet the severe criteria, and that normally does happen even though you don't have a damaging wind risk with the thunderstorms itself. Um, so if we put this, if we look at the 11Z around 4 and we take a look at the wind shear. So there is elevated wind shear, which can mean which these thunderstorms will be able to organize more. And this wind shear is high enough that I would not be surprised if they actually do issue a wind risk with these thunderstorms, because the wind shear is in upwards of 70 to 80 knots in some spots, but really more widespread around 60 to 70 knots. And then as we continue, that will kind of continue with that line of thunderstorms and move through, with 60 to 70 knot wind shear. So there's that. We also have we can also take a look at the surface space CAPE, also known as convective available potential energy. This one I do not see much happening with this, although things could get interesting on Friday as you can see that rising. But for right now, there doesn't seem to be much CAPE. There just seems to be enough wind shear and enough cold air aloft to produce the potential for some hail and potentially gusty winds. The supercell composite is also not reaching that far north, which indicates to me that there will not be much of a threat of significant supercells. But as we take a look at the updraft helicity, you can see there is basically right in that spot where they issued the 5% risk, there is the potential for supercell thunderstorms. And with this being said, just expect some localized hail, maybe some gusty winds with the thunderstorms, all depending on what happens. All right, on to the next threat, which has been expanded just now. Again, uh, things look a little bit different. I actually kind of like this look more of the SPC myself. The slight risk has been expanded through the Ohio Valley now, all the way to Texas. The marginal risk has been expanded all the way from the Ohio Valley all the way down to Texas as well, and then you can see generalized thunderstorms anywhere else in the light green shading. Light green shading. There is a low-end tornado risk with this, but it is a non-zero threat. A 2% risk of tornadoes that extends from southwestern portions of Indiana all the way to northeastern portions of Texas. There's also a damaging wind risk, which is the highest on this in this wind threat. You can also see here they've added new probabilities as well. 5% risk is in the brown and the yellow. And you can also see the hail risk is also elevated. This is for Wednesday into Thursday of this week. And you can see the damaging wind risk is mostly in southern Illinois, through southern Missouri, northwestern portions of Arkansas, southeastern Oklahoma, and northeastern portions of Texas. And then there is also a hail threat. So yeah, all those to consider. We'll go through this outlook here right now. All right, so here we go. So we're going to start on Wednesday. This is the RRFSA model that is also for predicting severe weather. So we're starting through Wednesday. Early in the morning hours on Wednesday, there's not much happening. But as we get in the morning, when the heat, the temperatures and the dew points rise, we see clusters of thunderstorms moving through. It looks like mostly a damaging wind threat to begin with. But you can see there is potential for some supercells across portions of Illinois and Missouri. This looks to me more like a damaging wind event rather than anything else like that. And then as we continue moving through, we see these spotty localized thunderstorms that do reach severe criteria in this future radar. And we have also other clusters of thunderstorms. These are the ones that are going to be capable of producing large hail and the potential for tornadoes because they are more individual in nature. And as we continue through Thursday, as the severe weather threat evolves, that's basically the end of that. But you can see there is tons and uh, tons of convection. Now, if we look at the temperatures going through Wednesday, the temperatures are going to be steadily rising into the 60s and 70s and potentially even closer to 80 degrees in some spots, but not near the warm front. Um, Add that with the dew point, and dew points are going to be getting quite up there into the 50s and 60s and potentially even 70s in very localized spots. There could be an isolated 70-degree dew point if these dew points do get high enough, but the 70-degree dew points would most likely be off the Gulf Shore. You add those together, and what do you get? You get CAPE. So with the convective available potential energy, there is a ton there. This easily meets slight risk criteria. It looks like it looks like to me through the mid morning, through the afternoon and evening hours is going to be the best chance to see any potential for severe weather. And if we take a look at the wind shear as well, we take a look at this line of thunderstorms moving through. So we'll stop this at 420Z, and we take a look at the wind shear. You have this, here it is right here. This is where we could be potentially dealing with some issues. This looks like even more enhanced risk severe weather to me. They could issue kind of a little area of enhanced risk here, just due to the fact that the wind shear is higher and there is more instability. And you can see some of these wind shears are getting close to 80 knots around a southern half of Missouri. If we take a look at the significant tornado parameter, just to give you a general idea of why the risk is down to 2%, you can see it here. Actually, that looks more like a 5% risk to me. I would not be surprised if this tornado risk gets elevated, just a slight tick. Mostly where I'm circling right here. Just a slight uptick. Probably not going to reach 10% criteria, but maybe 2%. Maybe an elevated area of 5%. So if we look at this tornado risk overall, it's probably going to be somewhere in here. Somewhere in the middle, they could issue a 5% risk. It would probably be a very small 5% risk, but there's the potential for that. And if we look at the updraft helicity, just to give you a general idea of where the strongest storms could be, well, there you go. It looks to be southern Missouri, where we could have some stronger thunderstorms. All right, now we're going to get to the next day of severe weather. It's going to be a long one. So here is the threat for Thursday into Friday. So this one includes a large area of large marginal risk of severe weather that expands all the way from the northern plains all the way through the southern plains. The marginal risk extends all the way from Iowa all the way down through Texas, and there's a slight risk of severe weather that includes portions of central Kansas, western Oklahoma, and northern portions of Texas. This does include a hatched risk. This is a level 1 intensity risk, but there is a hatched risk. And as you see again, you notice the hatched risk does expand into the gray zone, which it didn't used to do that. But this just, I really like the way the Storm Prediction Center is doing this because it really gives you a better idea of even in the lower end thresholds where the severe weather is going to be. So as you can see, the hatched risk area expands from all southern North Dakota, all the way down to portions of Texas, and then you can see that slight risk of severe weather that expands from the central portions of um, uh, Kansas, Oklahoma, and northwestern portions of Texas. And for this severe weather outlook for Thursday and Friday, we will take a look at the models again. All right, for this threat, we're using a weather model that is not the greatest at predicting weather, but we'll give it a shot anyway. So here we go. Thursday into Friday is it's not picking up the thunderstorms very well, unfortunately, but it would be we're going to use the European model. Here's the European model. We go through Thursday into Friday, and then that's when that severe weather risk really ramps up. I don't know why the severe weather risk is all the way over there. All right, so here we are. Beginning Thursday afternoon is when we start to see these thunderstorms to develop. It should start in kind of a clustered line of thunderstorms that are very, very low end risks. But as we continue to go through the day, it develops into a much stronger line of thunderstorms. At this point, we would be dealing with more of a damaging wind threat, and that's why I think the damaging wind threat would be the highest probability. But obviously, there's potential for other things as well. As this continues to go through, it kind of breaks apart by Friday morning. Still clustering of thunderstorms, a good line of thunderstorms moving through portions of Oklahoma, Texas, and Kansas. As this continues to move through, it's moving through portions of Kansas and Oklahoma, continuing to move through, and that's that. So as this moves through, this is around 6 OZ. So here it is. It doesn't look overly impressive to me, but here it is anyways. 30 to 40 knot winds, which is in that slight risk of severe weather zone, is where you see the wind shear, which means the slight risk will most likely be for the damaging wind risk, but I'd like to see the photographs. The photographs are also elevated, which means it's basically the line is right in here, which means there's just enough spin. And if we just take a quick sounding here, you can see here that there's not much really happening here. The yeah, but there is still the risk of tornadoes, so I think this risk will be for damaging winds and the threat of maybe a couple of tornadoes, but it could be several tornadoes actually, because there's two pockets in the severe weather risk of elevated cape and the spin in the atmosphere, where there could be upwards of 1,000 joules per kilograms in portions of North Dakota and Kansas and portions of southwestern portions of Texas. Looking at the temperatures higher in the atmosphere, you can see where this front comes through here. It could be cold enough for hail. So damaging winds, tornadoes, and hail is going to be my primary threat to watch out for. That is what I'm predicting for this threat. And then we get into the major threat that will be on Friday into Saturday, which could be very significant, just to be aware. All right, so here we go. Here's the risk for Friday into Saturday. We have a large slight risk of severe weather that expands from the Great Lakes region all the way down to Texas. And then we have this newly added 30% risk, which would be the enhanced risk of severe weather. And given this is still a couple days out, things can definitely change. So the enhanced risk of severe weather expands from the northwestern corner of Missouri, the extreme eastern half of Kansas, eastern Oklahoma, and a very, very small sliver of extreme northern Texas. And as we look at this threat, it's going to start off with clusters of thunderstorms, very clustered, kind of very all types and modes of thunderstorms. It looks like just clusterings of thunderstorms, which tells me a tornado risk will be on the table this time, unfortunately, just because there is separation between these thunderstorms. It develops more into a line of thunderstorms, basically two lines of thunderstorms. One line of thunderstorms moving through the central plains. This includes Iowa, Missouri, and portions of Oklahoma and Kansas. And the other line of thunderstorms moving through portions of Arkansas. As this continues to move through, you can see this thunderstorm line continuing to move through. This is going through the morning hours on Saturday, which means we've basically hit the benchmark for the intensity of the thunderstorms through Friday afternoon. I think the worst of it will be Friday afternoon into Friday evening. And then when the sun goes down, the convection goes down because the sun is going down. The sun is the primary thing that heats the atmosphere, and that will no longer be there, which means these thunderstorms should cool off a little bit and be primarily damaging wind and hail producers, but you can still throw in the potential for an isolated tornado or two, or maybe even a couple. Continuing through, that moves through, and then we're gonna have to watch this front moving through the entire eastern half of the coastline. To me, this does not look like a widespread severe weather event for up and down the East Coast. It just looks like some isolated showers. But I want to do a little bit more analyzation with the severe weather risk for Friday into Saturday. So we're going to head to the central U.S. for this one. So here we go. We're going to take a look at it. So you can see the clustering of thunderstorms starting to happen. We're going to have a few clustering of thunderstorms up here. So I think there's going to be a few areas to watch. I think it's going to be in the Iowa area, Kansas area, and as well as North Dakota and portions of the northern plains. That's going to be one area to watch. The clustering of thunderstorms already not a good thing to see like this. Moving through the day, you can see we reemerge thunderstorms during the afternoon and evening hours on Friday. It should start through portions of Texas, and then it should move through the evening hours, and we should have kind of two separate lines of thunderstorms, and they're just clusterized enough and just kind of farther apart that we could see some embedded rotation within these thunderstorms. So QCLS tornado threat is on the table. What a QCLS threat means is basically embedded rotation within the line of thunderstorms. That is a possibility. Moving through the day through Saturday, this line should get out of here during the afternoon hours and evening hours, and should be out of here well before dawn, well before the clock strikes midnight. And then I would worry actually through Saturday morning actually across portions of Missouri and Arkansas for the potential for more clustering of thunderstorms, which means, again, it is a nocturnal threat, which means it's overnight, but there's still the potential for tornadoes. Now, looking at the wind shear, I kind of want to look at a few things here. First off, I want to look at the wind shear for this area. If we look at the threat, there's a few bullseye areas. They could add for a moderate risk of severe weather, because I just want to look at the wind shear real quick. On the northern half of this piece of this enhanced risk, and on the southern half of the piece of this an enhanced risk as well. And I do think this enhanced risk actually will be expanded a bit farther to the east, and maybe even this slight risk of severe weather gets expanded to the east a bit too. But as you can see, there's this clustering of thunderstorms happening in portions of the southern plains. 609Z, if we take a look at the wind shear for this area, here we go. So the thunderstorms are clustered over here. There is around 40 to 60 knot winds, which means I don't think it's quite enough for a moderate risk of severe weather to be issued. However, if we look at the photographs, that gives us a different story, and still much of the same thing. The enhanced risk of severe weather um, is basically what I'm looking at. But now what I want to look at is there is you've got the Cape. Um, if we take a look at the most unstable Cape, you've got Cape, and the Cape is elevated, which means there is tons of instability. I want to take a look at the temperatures and the dew points. So temperatures going through Friday into Saturday, they are going to be up there. Not incredibly up there, but we could be looking at temperatures between 60 and 70 degrees, and localized areas ahead of this area where actually supercells could develop potentially, because of the temperatures and the dew points combined, potentially in portions of Missouri. There could be the potential for some localized development around the area, convection, that could promote the risk of thunderstorms as well. Maybe not as severe, but there's still potential. The dew points get into the 50s and 60s, so the 60s, and as they go through, they remain in the 60s, very sticky, and these combined is the Cape. So there you have the dew points in the Cape, which means I think there's going to be two bowling balls or two areas of concern, and I think one of them is going to be up here in portions of Kansas, Iowa, and other states up here for potentially. I don't think they're going to issue a moderate risk of severe weather, but they may, because there's two pockets of areas for clustering of thunderstorms, and then another one down here as well. And the temperatures and the dew points around that time frame are elevated, which means there is a potential for tornadoes, damaging winds, and hail being all at risk with this one as well. I have yet to take a look at the temperature gradient from above, but it does look like that cold air comes in from behind, and where they clash, you can see 16 degrees Celsius, so it is cold enough for hail. If we look at, looking up through here, it looks like there could be the potential for some hail. So I expect damaging winds, tornadoes. There could even be the potential for a tornado outbreak. I think it's gonna be more localized and more separated in parts, just due to the fact of where the thunderstorms could set up. Again, we're still trying to find out the details for that, but there could be the potential for two areas of clustering of thunderstorms, and then and eventually two separate lines of thunderstorms that develop. So initially, it will be probably a damaging wind and tornado threat, and then on the southern half of it, or I should say, on the later half of the severe weather risk, there could be the potential for more of a damaging wind risk. I think hail, tornadoes, and damaging winds will be the primary concern. And online, I'm sure you've seen the potential for even strong tornadoes. That is not out of the question either. If we take a look at the hatched region here, or it hasn't come out yet, I apologize. Um, so that moves through Friday into Saturday, but you can see what I'm talking about. I would mark this area for a potential area for severe weather. Enhanced risk. Actually, this is the potential for tornadoes. Probably a 5 to 10% risk. And then as we go down to the south, more clustering of thunderstorms, which means yet again another 5 to 10% risk of tornadoes, maybe even a 15% risk. I'm not exactly sure yet. And then you can see this all kind of combines into a line of thunderstorms and moves off to the south and east. So yeah, there's that, and that's that severe weather risk. Now we've covered that, let's take a look at the overall pattern. So it's been an overly cold winter for much of the U.S. Particularly the eastern half of the country, but we're going to see a temperature roller coaster as we move through the portions of the week. So we're going to see multiple days of this ridge building down here. As we go into Wednesday, temperatures start to click up a little bit, even more on Wednesday, where we get temperatures all the way up into the 40s and 50s. In places that don't normally see it this time of year in March. This goes all the way up into another northern plains, could extend all the way up into Canada, the Great Lakes region, and all the way up to the northeast. And then we continue on, and there should be a cold front that comes through on the 7th, which should drop these temperatures down back to where slightly above average, but not by a whole ton. And then the northeast really gets the cold air from this one, and then we could be dealing with yet another week of warm temperatures. And then I do think the cold air will eventually make a return for the later half of March. I think this is just a what you would call a fake spring. And then if we take a look at the precipitation, you can see we're gonna have multiple storms coming through. I also want to eye out another potential storm system that we would have to watch out for that has been trending lately. I would watch out for next week, Tuesday through Friday, for the potential for a severe weather event. I don't want to say an outbreak, but by the looks of things, it looks like potentially an outbreak. And then it turns into more of a squall line and a damaging wind event for the Northeast. So I want to keep an eye on this for the next week for a strong cold front, and behind this will come very cold air behind it. You can see that on the European model. You can see the cold air filtering through. Temperatures quickly drop down to the teens, but there's that, and then multiple shots of cold air after that potentially. If we take a look at the GFS model, which is just coming out with the 18Z, but we'll take a look at the actual the weather risk. You can see that first cold front comes through Friday into Saturday, sparking some thunderstorms across the southern U.S. That'll enhance the severe weather risk. That moves through, and we kind of get this very flat jet stream kind of look that kind of just goes from just west to east, which is a very interesting thing because during the CFS model's actually been hinting at this for quite a few months now of a flat jet stream. But as you can see, it's just kind of just low pressure systems after low pressure systems kind of just riding along this boundary, and then eventually we get that cold front that comes through. This one is particularly later, with maybe a severe weather risk in portions of the Great Lakes region and in Ohio Valley and northern plains, and then into the Northeast as well. But that does not look like to be an overly major risk. Right now, the risks are to begin today through Saturday. We may be live on Friday into Saturday for that storm system because it does look to be overly significant. I would not be surprised if they issue a moderate risk of severe weather, which is a 45% risk. Particularly for tornadoes and damaging winds, I can see it happening. But I think to generalize it, I also wanted to show the concern for the cold front going through the 12th for the Northeast. Because if we look at the Northeast on the European model, you can see this very strong cold front coming through during the day on Thursday with a very potent line. This could be even damage. This could even potentially be a severe weather risk of its own, because this looks to be a very strong cold front, and it moves through. But we have gusty winds ahead of it. If we take a look at the damaging wind gusts or the gusty winds ahead of it, you can see wind gusts could gust as high as potentially 40 to 60 miles per hour for a lot of locations, and then should be out of here by Friday. But this is still a whole week away. And here's the interesting thing about this. The interesting thing about this is, if this gets slightly tilted, a negative tilt, not like this, but like this low pressure system, kind of, let's say it comes here and then it kind of drags like this, we could be dealing with a more significant damaging wind threat. But because of the fact that it's oriented like this, you do not get the significant damaging winds pulling off the coastline. But if this were more negatively tilted, and this storm system was kind of almost, you get what I mean, we could be dealing with more of a damaging wind risk with heavy rain falling around the 12th of March. But this is one to watch, and then after that, a whole bunch of uncertainty. I think the cold air will eventually return and will turn into this. We are in a La Nina stage right now, which means we could be going back down into the potential for a neutral phase Enzo pattern, which means we could be dealing with more cold and snow for the northern half of the country, which looks to be what may just happen with this look here. And then we get another huge winter storm once again with the gusty, probably a blizzard on the northwestern half of it, and a blizzard on the northern piece of it as well. With cold air coming in from behind. This would be on the 18th if this were to ever happen. But it does look, I think winter will make a big return. And just to confirm that thinking, you can see on the CFS model, you can see cold air doesn't really go anywhere. You get this kind of neutral phased Enso pattern where you get potential nor'easters and winter storms, and the temperatures will be they should flatten out and become more wintry once again as we go through the second half of March. This does not look to be like it will be a significant warm up, and there's potential for a lot of snowpack to be melted away, but that is that. Looking at the Climate Prediction Center, it kind of follows that general pattern. 6 to 10 days. Right now we're having a ridge building, which means temperatures will be above normal for pretty much 80% of the United States, and then the overall precipitation will be above average for the Great Lakes region, the southwestern half of the country, as well as the Pacific Northwest. And then as we go further, you will see what I mean. We will get to this more of a neutral phase of the Enso pattern. This is the El Nino / La Nina, and you can see this. This is predicted March, April through May. We have what is a classic split neutral phase Enso pattern, and this should favor more in the way of snow and cold for the northern half of the country, and warmer and drier conditions, or actually, scratch that, warmer and more precipitation for the southern half of the country. For the next couple of weeks, our hazards, obviously, we have a hazard for we have some hazardous things going on, risky precipitation. Again, like I've been saying, March 11th through 17th, we could be dealing with a slight risk. There is a slight risk of precipitation for the entire eastern half of the country, pretty much, and then a moderate risk of heavy precipitation for portions of the eastern half of the country as well that goes into the southeast. Looking at snow, there's a slight risk of snow accumulation across the Pacific Northwest, and for winds, I agree with this as well. When that storm system moves through the one for the 12th that hits the northeast with gusty winds between 40 and 60 miles per hour, you have the slight risk. This is crazy to me, seeing a slight risk of high winds for 95% of the country, and yeah, there's that. Alright, that's it for this video. Hope you guys did enjoy. I should be back to a more regular schedule at some point as far as the uploads go, but hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to never miss our upload. And without further ado, we will see you in the next one. Bye.